Today I'm going to be learning about Canadian history and in particular Canadian military history by learning about the Battle of Vimy Ridge. Now I learned briefly about it through a Heritage Minute video and I've seen it mentioned in other videos that I watched, but it's still a situation I know very little about, but I know of its importance to Canadian military history. I know it's a momentous moment in that history. Tell me what you know about it. Tell me how important it is to Canada. I can't wait to learn about it. This one should be interesting as well because it's narrated by another legendary Canadian, William Shatner. But being British, of course, I truly appreciate Canada's role as one of our strongest allies, the Canadian military. I know that although it's not maybe the biggest military, I know it's one of the most well respected. So I can't wait to find out more about it with this video. And you can tell me what you know about Vimy Ridge and your thoughts on it.
The winter of 1917 was the coldest France had seen in 40 years. In April, there was still snow on Vimy Ridge. The Germans controlled the ridge, and thousands of French and British lives had been lost trying to capture it. Now, it was the Canadians' turn. At 5 a.m. on Easter Monday, April 9th, 30,000 troops huddled below the ridge. Many of them in subterranean caverns that had been dug, waiting for the signal. Zero hour was 5:30. The attack had been meticulously planned. Behind the lines, a replica of Vimy Ridge had been created, and the Canadians trained there until they knew the terrain as well as the Germans. They had detailed maps supplied by reconnaissance flights. If old Kaiser Bill only saw the preparations that had been made, wrote 21-year-old Lieutenant Claude Williams, he would throw up the sponge, I'm sure.
And so I say, this is what I already know about the Canadian military and why it's so well respected is strategically and tactically, they're one of the best at implementing these strategies, the training, so well trained as well. So you can already see that in World War I, they took that strategy and planning so serious. Where the British and French had failed before, they're obviously trying to learn from that situation as well. But you can see how important that is already.
Each of the 4 divisions had an objective indicated by a colored line. The black line was the enemy's forward defenses. The red line was the taking of Hill 145. The blue line included Hill 135, and the brown line was the German second line. The coordinated assaults were timed to the minute. At 5:30, more than 3,000 pieces of artillery roared. The first wave of 15,000 infantry stormed the ridge. The German machine guns were devastating, but the infantry pushed through to the front line trenches.
And that's the
6:15, the black line had been taken.
And that's the bravery as well, man. 15,000 people, 15,000 soldiers running into machine gun fire. As much as I talked about the strategic and tactical side, when you look at the personality of Canadian soldiers as well, they say that, obviously I watched that video before, when they go to war, they change into completely different people. Canadians can be the nicest people in Canada, but when they go to war, they're completely different people. You see the bravery there to run into fire, to try and achieve their aims and goals.
Concealed by snow and smoke, the 1st Division advanced toward the red line. By 7 a.m., the German defenses had been cleared, although casualties were mounting. By 11 a.m., the Blue Line was in Canadian hands, and by 2 p.m., the Brown Line was secure.
So quick.
By the end of the following day, all that remained was the Pimple, the northern tip of the ridge, which was defended by Prussian guards. At 5 a.m. on April 12th, the Canadians hit the Pimple with heavy artillery. The 10th Brigade advanced and met with fierce hand-to-hand fighting. By 6 a.m., the position was taken.
So efficient. And well planned.
"I am king of the Pimple," declared Brigadier General Edward Hilliam. Vimy was taken. Though the costs were high, 10,602 casualties, 3,598 dead.
Jeez.
But in 6 days, the Corps had advanced 5 kilometers, taken Vimy Ridge, taken 4,000 prisoners, killed many of the enemy, and captured its guns. "The grandest day the Corps has ever had," said Major General Arthur Currie. "The attack was carried out exactly as planned. The sight was awful and wonderful." Vimy Ridge defined the Canadian Corps. It was filled with men who had been born in Britain, but they now considered themselves Canadian.
Well, that was the one I didn't actually know. They were born in Britain, but they now considered themselves Canadian. So that really shows that strong connection between our two countries. Just the massive loss of life there. Achieving their aim so, as I mentioned there, efficiently, just doing it so well, so cleanly, but losing so many lives at the same time. I can see why this is that momentous occasion. Obviously, as I said there, it was, on one hand, it's absolutely, it's just horrific, the amount of lives that were lost. But how well they performed and how they managed to achieve that so quickly is great at the same time. So it's very bittersweet.
They had proven themselves as an elite corps. They had accomplished what the French and British couldn't. Gregory Clark, an infantry lieutenant, wrote, "As far as I could see south-north along the miles of the ridge, there were Canadians, and I experienced my first full sense of nationhood. At home, the country felt the same way. Vimy Ridge became a touchstone of Canadian nationalism, our proudest moment in the war."
Wow. What's this place? Is that a memorial for Vimy Ridge? Wow. I mean, that is like quite emotional in a way. I mean, I can see why it's of such importance. It just shows how well the Canadian military performed. I think it's, as I mentioned on previous videos, it's the Canadian role in World War One, as this was World War Two and other conflicts. I feel that doesn't get enough respect in the UK whenever we learn about military history or history with regards to the World Wars. It's always on obviously a British view, looking at the British military, but also more the American military. I think the Canadian role in those conflicts doesn't get the respect it deserves. Like, as you say, there so many people gave their lives there. 10,000 just in this one situation gave their life. Something that should be respected, not just in Canada, but throughout all allied countries. Again, as I mentioned previously, it shows you the ingenuity of Canadian military professionals, the bravery that they showed, just the intelligence as well, how they managed to achieve something that the British and French couldn't achieve, but they did it so quickly and so well as well. Tell me what you know about Vimy Ridge. Tell me how it's remembered in Canada today. Do you have any relatives who were involved in this in any way? But yeah, tell me what you think about this documentary as well. Thanks.